One of the problems I think that young coaches run into, or coaches of young kids, is they get too detail oriented. And I always use the analogy of a house. When you build a house, you don't worry about the paint right away. You don't worry about the appliances. You're basically worrying about the foundation and then the framing, okay? The house will not stay up and withstand any storms if you don't have a good foundation. After the foundation is done, then you can start framing the house, and it isn't until after that that you start to finish it. At your level, at the Little League level, you do not have to worry about anything beyond this. Your job as Little League coaches is to set the foundation for the game, work on the framing a little bit, and Coach Monero and all his staff, they will handle the details from there. And I think one of the problems that when we go to coaching clinics and so forth, sometimes it's so detail-oriented when that is really the finishing things. Where coaches at your age, many times it's better off to learn the foundational things. So what I'm going to talk about tonight for a few minutes is really just some foundational things when it comes to catching and throwing that are transferable really to any position that a kid plays. As they get older, they're going to get a lot more position specific with their details. What I'm going to talk about tonight, just some really basic framework types of things for catching and throwing. So when it comes to building a foundation, these are all things that Coach Monero alluded to. And even if you're not very knowledgeable about the game, maybe you didn't play at a very high level, and coaching can be intimidating. You can look around and go, gosh, I go to these clinics and coaches are talking about all the stuff that I don't know how to do. I wasn't a very good baseball player. I know my son loves the game. I just want to help out. And sometimes that causes coaches really to not want to be coaches because they're intimidated. But always remember, if you're a Little League coach and you are focusing on these foundational things, you're going to be fine. And after that, it's really just building that framework, just some basic baseball movements that are transferable to any position. And then the coaches later on in middle school and high school and college, they're the ones who are going to fill in all the details like you would on your house. So as I said, what I'm going to talk about mostly tonight is the basic movements of catching and throwing. Really not very advanced stuff. It's stuff that you could introduce at T-ball right through age 12 through Little League. And even if you don't fill in all the details, as long as you're dealing with that framework, the coaches ahead of them, they can work with that later there. Of course, we're talking about defense. When we're talking about catching and throwing, we're dealing with the concept of defense. And I've always been a stickler on practicing defense if I had to emphasize one or the other, because offense and hitting is going to go up and down. Hitting is really going to depend on the pitcher that you're facing, and I have no control over that other pitcher. I also don't control the other team's defense. And so because of that, defense and pitching always has the advantage. And I can have a very good hitting team that runs into a good pitcher. I'm going to have a tough day, even if my hitting is really good. And so hitting is going to go up and down. Defense should remain relatively steady because we as a team have control over our defense and the catching and throwing. So if you do have a choice and you're not sure what to practice on, my advice is to stick with defense more because that is going to help you win some games. Now, when scoreboards and box scores start to come out in the newspapers, if you look carefully, you'll see a trend that you might be alarmed at how many times you see this. Check this out when you look at the box scores. The winning team in most games, and I'm talking like high school games, it's like 80 to 90% of the time. And in professional games, it's over half the time, most of the time when you look at the paper. The winning team scores more runs or an equal number of runs in one inning than the other team scores the entire game. Okay, so the scoreboard is going to look something like this. So when you start to see all those box scores in the newspapers, count how many box scores that happens. You will be surprised at how many times that does happen. It's just the nature of the game. And of course, big innings are a result of mostly errors and walks. If you've coached before, you know the frustration. Your team just gave the other team 5-6 runs on one hit. And you're like, how in the world did that happen? It's because of errors and walks. So anything you can do to cut down on those errors and walks, you're going to eliminate the big inning, and you have a much better chance of winning the game. Now, we at North Penn have stressed defense, and it comes out into some of the stats here. 2009, when we won the state championship, in the 4 state tournament games, we gave up 3 runs in 4 games. These are against the best teams in the state. We gave up 3 runs in 4 games. Coach Monero won it in 2013. His team gave up 6 runs, and 5 of those runs were in the last game. So he went through the first 3 games, giving up 1 run. And then last year, 2015, only 3 runs given up. That's incredible defense. And as Coach Yanni said, the pitcher in the final game last year and the pitcher in the semifinal game aren't even playing in college. So these are guys that are letting the hitters hit the ball, and their defense was just phenomenal. It prevented the beginning, and they ended up winning games there. So defense wins. When it comes to defense, really any process of catching and throwing is really 4 steps. You set your feet, you catch the ball, you set your feet, and you throw the ball. That's pretty much all defense is. So if you see a ground ball to the third baseman and he turns a double play, okay? Third baseman sets his feet, fields it. He sets his feet, throws it. Second baseman sets his feet, catches it, sets his feet, throws it. First baseman sets his feet and catches it. All defense is that process right there. Set your feet, catch, set your feet, and throw. And so whenever I work on defense with players and coaches, the very first thing I talk about is footwork, because baseball is played from the ground up. And footwork is always going to be the first step of any process when it comes to defense. And so my talk tonight is going to cover some brief foundational things when it comes to footwork, a little bit on hands, and then a little bit with eyes, with little kids especially. You can't talk about footwork without getting into the athletic position. And I'm still amazed at how many kids, even at the high school level that I watch, never get themselves into the athletic position before they play. They call it the athletic position because it's transferable to any sport out there. Baseball, football, basketball, surfing, ice hockey, whatever. Any sport you play, you've got to get your body in the athletic position. And so just getting kids to do that is going to make them a better fielder. Now, as we'll talk about fielding a little bit, the athletic position also puts the player into the first of 2 triangles that I emphasize when kids field the ball. And I'll talk about the second one later. But that is the athletic position. Now, here's my practice tip number 1. An easy thing you can do to help players always get in that athletic position is when you are doing any type of a drill for defense, don't let the player start the drill until he is in the athletic position. So one thing I will always do when I'm working with my son's team when he was since 7 years old, if I line the kids up and I'm doing a little catching drill, I'm underhanding tennis balls to them, real basic drill, I force them to straddle something, either a home plate, a base, an agility ring. I take a lid off a bucket, put it on the ground, and they must start by straddling the whatever it is on the ground, which immediately puts them in that position right there. And I don't allow any drill to start until the player is in the athletic position. Okay, so a good little tip that is transferable to any defense out there. Next part is, of course, aligning the feet. And again, it's one thing you will see kids not do. So when they're catching, they're in the athletic position. When they throw, they have to align their feet to their target. Now, aligning their feet does the following here. And with little kids, I talk about what I call the throwing eyes. And we all obviously have a set of eyes, but with little kids, I say, you have 6 sets of eyes. You have a set of eyes on your head, and when you align your feet, you have a set of eyes on the outside of your shoulder, outside of your elbow, side of your hip, side of your knee, and the side of your foot. 6 sets of throwing eyes. So all my kids, from the time they were 7 when I'm coaching them, they hear me say that all the time. After you catch the ball in that athletic position, you turn and get all your throwing eyes facing your target. And that will automatically align their feet, which as they get older is going to help with power, it's going to help with accuracy, but it's something all kids can be taught, whether it's t-ball or 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, high school kids, they can understand that. So basically, starting in the athletic position, catching the ball, aligning your feet, getting your throwing eyes facing the target, and you're setting the kids up for a lot of success no matter what position they play on the field. The next one is, well, one more advanced thing is, okay, well, if I want to quicken them up a little bit, because we know if a kid is standing still and he catches the ball and then he has to get his feet aligned, well, as they master that, you can then start to add some things. One of the things I would add is making sure they step to the ball. Now, of course, this is a first baseman, so first basemen are used to stepping to the ball in order to stretch, okay? But that's a skill that you can start to build in order to quicken that transition from catching to throwing. Now, my next tip here is, whenever you are doing a catching drill, and once they've mastered getting that athletic position, you can then add a more advanced thing, which is make them step to the ball. Okay, so instead of catching the ball still, when the ball is coming at them, they step to the ball. Now, the tip here is you always want them stepping to the ball with the foot that is on their glove side. Okay, so they're stepping to the ball with this foot here. If they were left-handed and the glove was on this side, they're stepping the ball with the foot that's on the glove side. Okay? Reason why for first baseman is if I step towards the ball and I stretch with my glove side foot, I can get out there much farther. Can't really get out there much farther with my right foot. But we've all seen first basemen especially run into the problem where they will run to the base and set up and then wait for the throw, which works if the throw's right at them. But we've seen little kids, the throw's a little bit over here, now they're screwed. Throws over here, they're screwed as well. So I'm going to show you a little more advanced tip that I think is one of the best things that I've taught my little kids. And they can make some really big jumps defensively if they learn this one tip associated with stepping to the ball. And that is, make sure they are stepping to the ball and timing their step so that their foot lands at the same time they catch the ball. Now, you'd be amazed at how many times that applies to all the positions on the field. And that eliminates a lot of the problems, particularly at first base that I talked about. Because if I time it so my foot lands at the same time I catch the ball, you'll never get the kid stretched out and then wait for the ball, because his foot should not land until he catches the ball. So he would do it correctly by getting to first base, the ball's thrown, and he steps, and the timing is the same. Okay, so he's always going to be stepping in the direction of the ball, which is what he should be doing at first base. But when that kid maybe plays shortstop and gets better, older, and he turns a double play, he's going to be stepping with that same foot. When he gets the ball, he times it, turns, and makes the throw. The timing is exactly the same. If he's an outfielder, fly ball, he's going to be catching it with that same foot forward and timing it so that he can catch and make the throw. If he's a catcher and base is loaded, ground ball, they throw it home for the force, the catcher's going to step with that same foot and time it, turn, and throw to first base. So these are simple framework type steps and procedures that carry over to basically every position that they can play. And even kids that I've worked with 7, 8, 9 years old, they can do this stuff. And it really sets them up for some big jumps defensively, and then it carries over into any position that they play. One of the controversies, though, is when they do step and they catch the ball and they get into their alignment position, how should they do that? Because some coaches will teach a shuffle, which looks like this, and some coaches will teach a crossover, which is like this. So the question is, which one do you do? I don't care. It doesn't matter. Okay, some people might say one is the other better. When they get older, there are some positions where one is more effective than the other, but they don't need to know that yet. The one thing I will say is try to get kids out of the habit of stepping behind. That is going to screw up fielders. So whether they shuffle into alignment, whether they catch and cross over, that's fine, okay? You don't want them to catch and cross behind. The human body is designed to walk one foot in front of the other. If I were to walk and all of a sudden do this, I'm going to fall. And so that's one of the things that prevents kids from good balance and agility and power, is they take their foot back, which screws the natural working of their body. Now, I will say, when kids are older, there are some exceptions to this. There are 2 or 3 plays in the infield where the best footwork is to step behind. But that's, again, that's the finishing work that Coach Monero can do and Coach Harris at your level. Shuffling or a crossover. We used to call it a crow hop when we were younger. Either way is fine. You just don't want them stepping behind. That's going to screw them up. All right, when it comes to the hands, okay, basic message is anytime they catch a ball above their waist, they high-five the ball. Anytime you catch the ball below your waist, you low-five the ball. We've all seen kids try to catch a pop-up like this. They're trying to low-five a ball above their waist. And we've all seen kids try to catch a ground ball like this. So basic drills, just lobbing them a ball, tennis ball, high-five, low-five, getting them into that basic high-five, low-five position. If the ball's right at their waist, they bend the knees and they high-five the ball, okay? To get a little more complicated, when you're telling kids to use 2 hands, okay? Basic saying I tell kids is thumbs up to catch, thumbs down to throw. You see Chase Utley here, he's ready to catch a double play. Both of his thumbs are facing the sky. That is the proper way to use 2 hands to catch the ball. His palms are facing when you do that. Too many kids that I work with, I constantly have to remind them, they stand like this. Okay? They hold the glove like this, they catch the ball like this. I say, no, thumbs up, palms facing each other. Because that is transferable to any ball that they're going to catch. If my thumbs are up and my palms are facing a fly ball, I just turn my hands like this. If it's a throw over here, I just move over. If it's a throw at me, it's here. If it's a throw below my waist, I turn. And if it's a ground ball, I just put my hands on the ground. So it's transferable to any ball that I'm going to catch. If my thumbs start in this position, my palms are facing. The only exception is if I have to reach over here on a backhand. But pretty much that's going to carry over into just about every catch that a young kid is going to have to make. Also, here's the second triangle. I mentioned the first one for the athletic position was between the feet and the head. The second triangle in every fielder is going to be between the glove and the feet. And so my kids have heard that so many times, my players, get in your triangles. And that means this and this. 2 triangles when they field. Every kid obviously knows what a triangle looks like. So that's a basic thing all kids can understand. All right, so I mentioned thumbs down to throw. Now, where their arm goes after it exits the glove is going to depend on what position they play, okay? But the littlest kids really just focusing on thumbs up to catch, and then when they turn and align their feet, thumbs go down to throw. That will eliminate most of the throwing problems that little kids get in the habits of, that Coach Monero has a very tough time fixing when they get to the middle school and high school level. Just taking the ball out of the glove and tilting that thumb down is going to eliminate most of the problems. I won't get into the technicalities of that, but turning that thumb down is going to solve a lot of problems. Chase Utley wants to get rid of the ball quick, so his arm is going to be bent, and he has a short, small circle when he throws. Cole Hamels is the pitcher. He needs to get more out of his arm, and so he's going to lengthen his arm. But the process of tilting that thumb down is the same. Where they put their hand is going to be position specific in many cases. All right, the last one here I'll talk about is the head and eyes. When was the last time you saw a chicken at a baseball clinic? But I find that amazing. All right? Take a look at the head and the eyes. There is a scientific name for this. This is called the vestibular sensory system. See, I teach AP psychology, so I'm smart. I know the scientific name for that. A lot of people would just call it head tracking, okay? Birds, chickens, hawks, owls, eagles have an amazing head tracking system. You could move that bird in a circle, and I've seen it done on YouTube. Their head will stay perfectly still. Now, we as human beings, for us to survive, we didn't need that good of a system. So we have a system, but it's not nearly as advanced as that bird. But it is very important for people to keep their head still when you play baseball, because we are going to be doing a lot of moving too. We're going to be diving, running, and it's very important that kids keep their head still and their eyes level in order to play. So any drill you're doing with little kids, constantly remind them to keep their head still and their eyes level. Now here's a tip, practice tip number 4. This is something I do all the time, even with my little kids, and it may sound advanced, but it's not. They actually like to do it. Anytime they are running, sprints in the outfield, running the bases, I tell them, focus your eyes on a sign or some word on a scoreboard or anything around the field, and as you're running, keep your eyes on that sign. And you should be able to read every word on that sign as you are running as fast as you can. But if they are not running correctly, their eyes are going to be shaking. And I remember when I was little, sometimes I'd be going after a fly ball, and the ball would appear to be moving. The ball's not moving, Bobby. My eyes are all over the place. That's how little kids run after the ball, because we don't have as good of a system as that bird that you saw. So it's something you have to teach players, that as they move, they have to keep their head still. Baseball is hard enough, but if you're trying to hit, field, throw, pitch, and run the bases, and your eyes are shaking and tilting, you're not going to be a good baseball player, okay? Some good athletes do this naturally. They just know to do it. They have that body control. Others need to be taught to do it, but that will carry over to everything they do, keeping their head still. All right, so basically I talked about the feet, some basic concepts, athletic position, aligning your feet, stepping to the ball. Those are transferable to any position on the field. Hands, thumbs up, thumbs down. The eyes, keeping the head still. And again, these are things that will help them in every area of the game.